When you play the Game of Thrones, you
subscribe and like,
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Goblin YouTube channel. Today's video, we are going to be talking about the first Blackfyre Rebellion. I've done a couple of these videos in the last month, and I really enjoyed talking about this topic. So today's video is going to be kind of all surrounding what caused the first Blackfyre Rebellion. What were the factors that led to its sparking, and again, kind of showing why this time period is very fascinating, because there's events that happen, 15 years before the actual start of the Blackfyre Rebellion that are very key. Even if you go 30 years back, way even before Aegon IV becomes king, there's a lot of factors in here that are involved that are very interesting to look at. So in today's video, we're going to kind of discuss a lot of those factors. We're not going to hit all of them. So again, if I miss any, put them down in the comments. If you guys have a specific reason or take as to why you think the first Blackfyre Rebellion happens, let me know. But before we get into the video, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do. It helps the channel grow, reach our appeal that might like this content as well. And let's get into the video. So the first, I think, point that I want to make here, and it's going to be something I tie back onto a little bit when we get closer to the actual first Blackfyre Rebellion. But I want to talk about Daeron I. So this isn't the Daeron II, the Daeron the Good, the king that's in control and in power during the first Blackfyre Rebellion when Daemon rebels. This is actually the first Daeron who ended up invading Dorne. His reign was very short, and I want to talk about something because it's very important. By the time we get to Daeron II's reign, and we see that, okay, peace is being made with the Dornish, and all of that's going on, I want to kind of put into perspective what was the atmosphere in Westeros. How did the normal or common person feel about the Dornish? So let's go to this point where Daeron I, he says, I'm going to invade Dorne. I'm going to get all the kingdoms back. He kind of views it as kind of a failure of the Targaryens. They haven't been able to, put the last piece of the kingdom together. And so he ends up invading Dorne. And this goes horribly wrong towards the end of it, right? We have some really bad things that end up happening. Aemon the Dragon Knight, he ends up getting captured. There's some stuff that just doesn't go well. A lot of people lose their lives. It's just not a great point. It's why when I rank Daeron I as a king, he's ranked kind of in the lower half of the middle because he didn't really do a lot, and he lost a lot of lives, and he didn't even get Dorne into the fold. So why is this important? So not 15 years later, after this all happens, the conquest of Dorne with Daeron I, Aegon IV is going to become king. So again, not even 15 years. So when we're asking, when we get to the Blackfyre Rebellion, why all these people do not like the Dornish, they don't like that the Dornish are taking over power at King's Landing. Again, let's think about it, right? You have Daenerys, who is marrying the Prince of Dorne. You have Baelor, again, marrying a Dornish woman. Baelor himself looks Dornish. Daeron's wife being Dornish. So you see that you have all of these links to the Dornish, and it's just there everywhere. There's a lot of people that are in Daeron's supporting cast that are Dornish. So I'm going to get on and talk on this point a little bit later on as we kind of fully go through a bit more of the timeline. But I want to paint the picture that this event causes. It causes a lot of resentment toward the Dornish because, yes, maybe Westeros and, the Targaryen dynasty, they're the ones that actually invaded Dorne, which is, seems like it happens a lot. And, all of Westeros kind of villainizes the Dornish, even though a lot of the times they're just defending their own, country. But there's some atrocities that happen. We see a lot of, people die. And so when you're thinking about this later as a person, if you're thinking about it like this, okay, the Dornish killed my father, killed my husband, killed my son, killed my uncle. There's going to be so much resentment. And again, this is just this conquest that we have here. Dorne has been people have tried to conquer Dorne since the Targaryens took power. Aegon failed himself. So there's always this built-up hatred towards the Dornish. We see that there's these vulture kings, right, which causes issues for the Stormlanders and also the Reach, and even the Marsher Lords, where we see this idea that ideologically, there's just some people that will not accept the Dornish coming into rule. There's just this general racism towards the Dornish. And I think you can, if you want to make just a little comparison, is if you kind of look at America within the, again, I'm American, so I'm always going to make references to that. Sorry if you're not American, you don't really know where I'm going with this. But again, if we look at segregation and things like that, Jim Crow laws, things that were awful in American history, definitely a stain on American history. If we look at that point, that's kind of the way the Dornish are viewed, as these lesser people, as these foreigners that they've costed us our family members. Even again, as we talk about the Targaryens are usually the ones invading. So again, that is going to be kind of the sentiment towards the Dornish, and I think that's really important to set off before we get further down the line. And again, I'm not going to hit every single detail or reason as to why the first Blackfyre Rebellion starts. Again, you can talk about this stuff for hours. I think one of the best shows to kind of get more educated on this topic, and it's something that's helped me really understand and grasp these concepts, is the history of Westeros. The Blackfyre Rebellion series that they do. It's kind of older, but again, it's like an 8-part series. It's fantastic. I would highly recommend, if you have the time, to watch those. But again, those are hours long, like 2 hours every single one of those videos. So again, going to try to hit kind of more of the broad and or main points of the story. So that's going to hit us kind of to this Aegon IV point. So Aegon IV becomes king after his father Viserys II dies of resulting in a very mysterious death. I am someone that believes Aegon IV could have possibly poisoned or killed his father. So again, I think Aegon IV becomes king. He is someone that should not have been king. There was a lot of people in front of him in the line of succession, and then all of a sudden he becomes king. I mean, think about it like this, right? You have Daeron, who is a young, healthy guy, has no children. Baelor, again, Baelor the Blessed, has no children. He was a young guy, but he doesn't have any children. Then you come to Viserys. So when Viserys becomes king, okay, it's like, oh, okay, wow, Aegon's going to become king. And that's got to be something that's very interesting to think about for the average citizen, where you're sitting here going, I don't know about this Aegon IV guy. Aegon IV is a guy that, to me, reminds me a little bit of Robert in his youth, because Aegon IV is someone that is kind of described as being handsome. He kind of has the Targaryen features. He's very lusty. And early on, he is someone that doesn't show all of the signs of being a bad king till, I think, like the outward public. But I think people like Viserys II, being, his father, probably knew. There's multiple times where we see that Viserys sends Aegon's mistresses away. So the problem becomes when we get to the Blackfyre scenario, when Aegon becomes king. Aegon is someone that's very unfit to become king. He's an idiot. He's very lusty, which again makes him have multiple different mistresses. We see 2 different Brackens, a Blackwood. Again, one of those being Bittersteel's mother, and then another one of those being Bloodraven's mother. So we see a lot of issues with this, because something that's going to also spark the idea is, well, when we're talking about this kind of in the Daemon section, but because of the children that Aegon has, and because of the way people are able to manipulate and get what they want through Aegon, through more or less kind of trading like a young, beautiful woman for things in return. And to me, when we see a lot of the people that Daeron gets rid of when he becomes king, a lot of those people are going to go to Daemon, naturally. And that's, again, another part we're going to talk about with Daemon, in the reasons that I think he was kind of pushed to go to war, because we don't really have a lot on the character of Daemon. We don't know a ton about what Daemon was thinking, what was his ideology towards a lot of events like the Dornish and things like that. We can, again, make inferences based off of his decision-making and stuff like that, but we don't know fully, and that's something hopefully we'll get in Fire and Blood Part 2, or maybe it'll be expanded on a TV show. Who knows at this point? Now, another issue we're going to see is that Aegon IV, I think in a lot of ways, was very friendly with Daeron I. Again, it just, there's a lot of points that seem to lead to that area where it's like we have Daeron II, who is named after the first Daeron. We see that Aegon tries to invade Dorne. So there's a lot of similarities on that. Aegon probably did like Daeron I, which makes sense. Daeron was someone a lot of people liked. He was a well-loved figure. And Daeron is someone that even now in the main story is someone that's talked about quite a lot in his conquest for Dorne. It's something that we see with Jon and Robb bringing up. So to me, I think we see this anti-Dornish sentiment kind of come from Daeron and how Daeron was killed. So I think when you look at all this point, you come to a really weird scenario where you have, again, Daeron II's whole faction being kind of pro-Dornish and being very progressive. And that's going to clash with Aegon, who is someone that doesn't like the Dornish. So what does this do, right? It creates this strife between the two. And we're going to see that this is, again, going to get worse. Because what is going to happen here is that Aegon, again, we don't know exactly what his motivations were. We don't know if Aegon was plotting to try and get Daemon to be the next person in line, if he was trying to disinherit Daeron. I think to a degree, Aegon probably had some thoughts on that. And I want to point out a very specific event and where I think he stopped specifically trying to disinherit Daeron, because when we get to this another conquest of Dorne during Aegon IV's reign, which isn't really a conquest, it's where basically he tries to bring some wildfire on some boats, and again, it goes horribly wrong, and a single Dornish person is killed, and that ends any type of invasion on Dorne. And I think the reason Aegon specifically never calls out and says, you know, Daeron, you are not going to come after me, is because he knows that would cause a war. So what does Aegon do at this point, right? He'd already tried invading Dorne. It didn't go well. And also it's really sketchy because you also have, again, Daeron's family being heavily involved with the Dornish, literally married into their family, the Martells. So it comes to this point where you're sitting here going, okay, if you're a commoner of Westeros, we've now tried to invade Dorne again. We have all of this discord between the two parties, right? And the other party, to build onto Daeron, and another aspect we're going to talk about here, is what was the big selling point for Daemon's Blackfyre supporters, and also the common people as to maybe why Daeron shouldn't have came next. And the big reason here was that Aegon was, again, heavily suggesting that he was not the father of Daeron, that it was actually Aemon the Dragon Knight. And now this is a big point of controversy. Again, we don't know specifically what happened between Aemon and Nerys. Again, Nerys was the wife of Aegon IV, so it would be very weird if that was the case. Now we know that Aemon the Dragon Knight and Nerys had a very close and strong relationship, but we don't know how much that went. We don't know if it was more of a relationship, like love relationship, or it was more like, you know, family relationship, which I guess for the Targaryens isn't very different. But there comes this point where Aegon's like spreading these rumors, and here's the thing, right? When it first gets brought up, Aemon the Dragon Knight kind of shuts it down. You know, he wins a trial, and it kind of gets hushed for a while. Then Aemon the Dragon Knight dies protecting Aegon IV, and it all comes back up again because, you know, Aemon the Dragon Knight's not around to defend it anymore. So again, we're going to see, if you're a common person, you're going to see two different belief systems set up. One that's pro-Dornish, one that's anti-Dornish. And you're going to see these rumors. You're going to see that, oh, Daeron II, maybe he's not a true son of Aegon IV, which would then leave the door open for a couple other characters. And notably, when we get to Daemon Blackfyre, if we look at the first Bracken mistress that Aegon IV had, she ends up getting pregnant and has Bittersteel. And if we look at this, if Nerys would have died in childbirth, because this was also kind of happening around the same time, if Nerys would have died in childbirth, the Brackens were planning to get her, again, Bittersteel's mother, on the throne, and then also have Bittersteel be legitimized. He could then become the heir. Because in this way that they could disprove that, again, Daeron was not legitimate. And that would be kind of how Bittersteel could have possibly became king. It is a little bit of a, you know, you have to think about it and stuff, but it's possible. It could have happened. It's kind of the same scenario that happens to Daemon, except Daemon just has more legitimacy to him. Daemon looks more Targaryen. He has the sword, and Aegon seems to favor him as well. So again, those are all points that we look at Aegon IV that happened during his reign that really impact and kind of draw the lines in the sand for what is to come later on in Daeron II's reign. Now, another awful decision by Aegon was giving Blackfyre to Daemon giving Blackfyre to Daemon, and then Daemon takes that kind of as his house name, the Blackfyres. This was a really bad situation because, again, the dragons are gone. So from a common person's point of view, giving Aegon's sword to Daemon was kind of a sign of legitimacy. And again, we were also looking at a different time period in A Song of Ice and Fire, where this time period was all about chivalry. It was all about, you know, being a good jouster, a knight, all of those things that we see, those like stories or those tales that we hear, you know, with Sansa. A lot of that kind of originates in this time period. So this is very important. And we see a lot of people, Sir Eustace, use this as reasoning as to why you would back Daemon. He was the better sword fighter. If Aegon didn't want Daemon to become king, why would he give him Aegon the Conqueror's sword and not give it to, hell, Baelor or Daeron? Those are all strong points as to why people would support Daemon over someone like Daeron. Because again, back in the day, this wouldn't have been a big issue, right? If you had dragons, if you had, for instance, Balerion, or if you had Vhagar, if you had this, not a big deal, right? Because then it shows you're legitimate. You're legitimized, basically. Not during this time period, because the dragons are gone. Remember, the dragons have been gone for, you know, a couple years at this point. So now a sword has much more value to a Targaryen. So this will kind of move us into Daeron II's reign. And again, there's much more you can talk about with Aegon IV and things he did wrong and things he did right, even things you can speculate on. Right? Did Aegon IV really like think about all these things that were going to happen or repercussions of giving Daemon the sword? I would probably lean towards no. I think for me, Aegon IV giving Daemon that sword could have just been something where it was like, I don't really, like, he doesn't put value on things, right? Like, Aegon was someone that was actively giving away, like, dragon eggs, for instance. He is someone that didn't really put a lot of value on things, so you could, again, argue that maybe this sword just didn't really mean that much to him because Aegon was giving away a lot of treasure to the Targaryens anyway. I think that's a great argument for both sides, though. I think, you know, you could do the idea that Aegon was trying to show this as a sign for people to take that Daemon should be legitimate. I think all are great points. I'd love to hear what your guys' opinions are in the comments. But this kind of leads to Daeron II's reign. So Aegon IV on his deathbed legitimizes all the bastards. It's just, in my opinion, it really comes off as like a last fuck you to Westeros type thing, because he legitimizes all of them. If he wanted specifically Daemon to basically come after him, he would have just probably legitimized Daemon, but it was kind of one of those things where it's like, I'm just going to create some chaos as I'm dying. Probably one of the worst decisions of any Targaryen king of all time. It creates, again, generational issues for the Targaryens with the Blackfyres, but not great. So again, Daeron II comes to his kingship. What does he do now? And I think a strategy that Daeron maybe thought would work that didn't really end up working at all. So Daeron tries to keep all of the bastards kind of close together, right? So he keeps Daemon, he keeps Bittersteel, Bloodraven, Shiera, kind of all more or less together, kind of at court. And this really backfires, in my opinion, because what does it allow these people to do? What does it allow Bittersteel? What does it allow Daemon to do? One, it allows for these people to make connections, right? Be able to contact people that could possibly be allies if a war was to break out between the two sides. It really enabled a lot of that to happen. Again, Daeron, it seemed like a good position where Daeron was trying to take the middle ground, which we see a lot of what Daeron II does, is he kind of takes that middle ground area where he didn't go the full route of, like, say, imprisoning them or killing them, but he also didn't go the full route of, like, you know, like, actually bringing them into the family. He kind of took, like, a middle route. You know, he offered Daemon lands, and he also was, again, keeping up the allowance, because all the royal bastards were kind of given, like, an allowance type deal. He continued that. It wasn't really the best idea. I think if you would have kept all of the bastards, like, all over the place, right? Again, probably Daemon and Bittersteel, maybe they wouldn't have even met. Because, again, you have to think that Bittersteel and Daemon would have a lot in common. Both are great warriors, probably would have trained together, which we know that they actually did train together. I don't know why I said they would have trained together. They did. They're two people that, again, are in places that they could have been king if things had gone right. for them, right? Bittersteel, like we talked about, could have been king if things had gone right. Daemon is this character that people are whispering maybe he should be the king and all that stuff. So I think the two would have liked each other a lot. And we know during this time as well, again, because Daemon is still very young, is that he also got into connections with Fireball, someone that was one of the best swordsmen at the time. We know he helped train Daemon and probably Bittersteel and some of these other characters. We see Bloodraven trained with these people as well. Again, so it was not a great political move, in my opinion, for kind of what was to come in the future. You also have this setup that, again, the Blackwoods, the Brackens don't like each other. Also, you see that a Blackwood replaced Bittersteel's mother. Bloodraven and Bittersteel were kind of set out to be enemies right from the get-go, and that's something that, again, is going to impact how the first Blackfyre Rebellion kind of starts. Now, another thing I want to talk about with Daeron II's reign is he, again, gets rid of a lot of the people that were manipulating, taking advantage of his father, Aegon, and he gets rid of them. And where do you think all those people go, right? How are they going to keep gaining power, going up in status? How are they going to do all that? Well, they're not going to get it through Daeron, so let's go to Daemon. Again, Daemon is a point where a lot of people that are in a position to gain power go to. When we see Daemon and he starts the Blackfyre Rebellion, he doesn't get any of the actual major houses backing him. It's all of the second or third houses or these minor houses that back him because they can, again, move up the ladder, kind of the Littlefinger approach. So, again, that is something that I think is very important to remember, is that a lot of people that go to Daemon's side, yes, a lot of them are probably good fighters or swordsmen. There are a lot of people that are using Daemon to gain power and status. So that's something to, again, remember when Daeron gets rid of all these people. That's not a negative to Daeron. Daeron should have done that, should have done that, but there is that cause and effect of what ends up happening. So again, another part of Daeron II's reign early on that wasn't so good is he was a little too pro-Dornish. Now, I want to say, like, the Dornish, yes, they were never conquered, so maybe they should keep some of their customs. But the issue here is there's all of this pro stuff towards the Dornish. Very progressive thinking by Daeron. But how does that make the rest of Westeros feel? Right? Like, you're seeing the Dornish being allowed to keep, the Prince of Dorne or all these things. And then here you are sitting here going, wait, we had to give up all of our customs. And then you're seeing all of these Dornish people now on, the small council or surrounding Daeron II. It just seems like there was a blatant favoritism towards the Dornish, which again makes sense. They're married into Daeron's family, but there wasn't it being equally spread. And that's another reason there's going to be more resentment towards the Dornish. Again, everything I talked about with the beginning of the video, you also kind of compact with this idea that now the Dornish are gaining more and more power when, again, not 20, 30 years in the past, we were in open war with them, and Aegon had planned to attack them. Again, it's just something that if it had been done maybe slower, if, again, Daeron had implemented the Dornish influence a little bit slower and gave it a bit more time, or maybe it had gone through generations and we'd have slowly healed it up, it maybe would have worked out better. But all of this was moving way too quickly. And that is kind of one of the other issues. So let's move again. We're going to skip some things because we're going to go back. We'll talk about Daemon. We'll talk about Bloodraven and kind of their connections to how this starts the war. But we get to this point where Daeron basically says, we need to go get Daemon Blackfyre. He's gotten information. Most likely, this isn't confirmed. Again, it's brought up. It's, again, the highest possibility. But Bloodraven informs Daeron that Daemon Blackfyre is going to crown himself and go into open rebellion. Now, I guess I'll hit the Bloodraven point I have. Again, I think he's a big proponent and one real point of how the war starts, or I guess one or two. But I want to think about this from Bloodraven's point of view. What did he actually tell Daeron? We're not told to the extent of what Daemon was doing. Was Daemon basically saying, yes, I'm going to become king, I'm going to, make myself king? Or was it more that Daemon was having talks with people saying, oh, well, if it came to it, if I rebelled, or for some reason, I crowned myself, would you back me? There's a difference between hypotheticals and actually saying you're going to, again, crown yourself. We don't know if Bloodraven manipulates Daeron here. Again, Bloodraven would have a lot of reasons to. He doesn't like Bittersteel. He would rather Bittersteel be out of the picture. Daemon as well, probably. So I think, to me, there's a lot of questions that maybe will get answered with Bloodraven in the future with maybe Bran's POVs. But there's some questions there of, did Bloodraven start the war earlier than it needed to? Because we know that this capture of Daemon goes poorly. Probably Fireball was there to help save the day and get Daemon out of there. But this sparks the war. This starts the war, basically. So again, something as simple as the word choice that Bloodraven used to Daeron could have started this war a bit earlier than someone like Daemon would have liked. Now, something else I want to talk about with Daeron as a person, as to, again, why people wouldn't follow him is, again, he's a very bookish guy. He was not someone that was a fighter who participated in these tournaments. He wasn't this chivalrous guy like, say, Baelor was, his son. So again, I think people looked at Daeron and said, this is not the guy, the strength that we need without the dragons that should be ruling us. And that, I think, to me, is a good point. And I think when we also look at the idea here that Daeron's family, again, does not look Valyrian. A lot of them, especially the main ones like Baelor, was Dornish. Baelor didn't particularly look very Valyrian. So again, I just want to rattle off a couple points before we get into Daemon Blackfyre and kind of the war starting and getting towards the end of the video. But again, put yourself in the shoes of someone in the Reach, someone in the Stormlands, someone in the Marsherlands, where you're close to the actual, Dornish people and all of the Vulture Kings, the things that have been happening, the wars you've been heavily involved in. And you think about it the way that that person maybe would perceive what's going on. You see Daeron getting buddy-buddy with the Dornish, again, getting very close to them. You've, probably lost at least one person in your family. I think these conflicts would have affected every single family, especially in the South. You would have seen, again, a very anti-Dornish, racist, I feel like, outlook on the Dornish people as a whole. Again, you would have seen this guy, Daemon Blackfyre, who looks the part, kind of a second coming of Aegon the Conqueror, who has the sword of Blackfyre, the symbol of Aegon the Conqueror. It would have really been appealing to join him. And especially when you look at other houses that would have had a lot of personal gain or greed from joining Daemon. If you're a house like the Peaks, you're a very strong house within the Reach, but you're still under houses like the Tyrells, like the Hightowers. Daemon offers you a path to gaining more power, to becoming more in charge. And again, when we even look at the power base that we'll see Daemon have, it is in the Reach. So again, you really see why people would back Daemon when you go into the shoes of, people that lived in the South, especially. The North probably didn't care about the situation. They had their own shit going on. People like the Vale probably would be very different, right? They don't have many interactions with the Dornish. You're married into the crown. It would have been very different given the geography of Westeros and what houses would have supported Daemon and what houses would not. So this kind of leads us to the last little point here. And Daemon Blackfyre himself. Was he someone that wanted to be king, or is this something that he was kind of pushed into it by other people and convinced to take the throne? And I really feel like Daemon Blackfyre is a character that comes off as being very chivalrous, very honorable. I am someone that does not believe that Daemon Blackfyre himself wanted to be king, but was more manipulated by the people around him, which, let's think about the people around him, right? You would have had a soldier types. You also would have had a lot of the people that were backing Aegon IV, that were manipulating him, using him. Those same people would be backing Daemon. So I think all of those people would have wanted Daemon to become king, pushing him to. I really can see in a world where Bittersteel is really pushing Daemon to take the throne. Someone like Fireball, again, also egging him on. We hear rumors of that. I think all of these are really good options for why Daemon takes the throne. Who was pushing him to do these things? And another thing I want to talk about with Daemon actually getting away, right? When, again, Daeron tries to capture him because Bloodraven informs him that he's trying to crown himself. I want to talk about some other reason as to possibly why he could have gotten out just outside of, Fireball interceding. If we look at Lord Butterwell, Lord Butterwell was the hand of the king all throughout the Blackfyre Rebellion up until kind of like the end of it, where we see, I believe it's Lord Hayford comes in, and he's the hand of the king. But Lord Butterwell probably had very much Blackfyre sympathies. We see him being involved in the Blackfyre Rebellions after the first one, and also he does such a poor job that Daeron relieves him of his duties and thinks that he was probably a Blackfyre sympathizer. So again, there's a lot of evidence to probably suggest that that was true, that Butterwell could have also been someone that could have helped inform Daemon what was going on, or people around him like Fireball to even get to helping him. So that is kind of my video on the beginning of the first Blackfyre Rebellion. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Again, I didn't hit every single point. I tried to hit the main ones. If you guys have anything else you want to add to the video, leave it down in the comments. And I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. I really enjoy talking about the first Blackfyre Rebellion specifically. And yeah, I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.